We live in a world that tells us to go big or go home. The change must be loud. That impact must be massive, and that if you are not shaking the world, well, then you're wasting your time. But I believe that narrative misses something critical. In fact, it skips the most powerful part of transformation. And if the light bulb hasn't gone off yet, that powerful part I'm referring to is you. You are not a spectator to this life. You're not here just to observe. You are the author, the builder, the one with the pen in your hand and a beautiful story to tell. And beyond that, yes, you also have the power to create massive change, not just someday, not just in theory, but now, today, in this moment. Here's my point, though, in the case that I want to make. I think most people approach it backwards. They aim to change the world while skipping the only part of the world they actually have control over, themselves. They rage against the machine, but ignore their own gears grinding from neglect. One of my favorite quotes, as Tolstoy once said, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. We want to change systems, governments, culture, communities, but we leave our own habitats untouched. We leave our own lives in chaos. We try to fix people, but we haven't yet learned to lead ourselves. And that leads me to a story, a very simple story that I think brings this home. There was a young boy walking along a beach shortly after a storm. The tide had gone out, leaving thousands of starfish stranded on the sand, drying in the sun. And one by one, the boy began picking them up, throwing them back into the ocean. A man who saw it from the distance walked up and laughed. He said, "Boy, you're crazy. There are thousands of those things. You can't possibly make a difference." The boy picked up another starfish, threw it gently into the waves, and said, "Yeah? Well, I made a difference to that one." See, we overlook the truth every single day. We underestimate the power of one gesture, one disciplined morning, one hard conversation had instead of avoiding. Because of its size and granularity, we think it's nothing, but in reality, that little decision is everything. Because greatness, real greatness, is completely detached from applause. It's built on alignment. It's when who you are, what you believe, and what you do all match. Now, I say a lot of quotes are my favorite quotes, but this is absolutely, I think, one of the best speeches ever given by Admiral William McRaven, the University of Texas. And one of the premises to his speech, he said, if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. Because the simple act of doing something well, something meaningful, but small, with discipline and pride, begins a chain reaction. It tells the world, hey, I respect myself. I'm not careless with my time. I'm not a victim of the chaos. I am a force within it. That's what we forget. Change doesn't have to start with the world. In fact, it can't. It can start with your morning. It can start with your breath. It can start with how you treat your spouse, your kids, your teammates, your body, your craft. You don't need to carry the weight of the entire planet. But I strongly advise you carry the weight of your intentions. See, I've learned that broken people trying to fix the world often just project They spread more brokenness. But healed people, they create ripples that outlive them. If you fix your routine, you fix your energy. If you fix your mindset, you fix your response to setbacks. And if you fix your response to setbacks, you become unstoppable. This isn't about perfection, it never was. It's about presence. It's about the courage to stop pointing fingers and start pointing forward. Look, maybe you're not where you want to be. Maybe the mountain feels too steep. Maybe you feel invisible in a world addicted to noise, but let me remind you something. You can change your life. You can redefine yourself. You can stop living on autopilot and start building a story that matters, not to the masses, but to you and to those close to you, your family, your friends, your community, those who look up to you. That is real power. So no, pragmatically speaking, you may not save all the starfish. You may not reach everyone. You may never get a standing ovation, but you can reach someone. You certainly can be a light in one room. You can change the direction of your life, and that's the only place change has ever started. You are the stone dropped in still water. You are the start of the ripple. So make your bed, keep your promises, say what you believe, push through, lead yourself. And when the world asks what difference that makes, you can smile, just like that boy on the beach did. Pick up one more starfish and say, today, here in this moment, I made a difference to this one. So imagine you're sitting down, having something to eat, thinking, relaxing, reading, whatever you're doing. And someone walks up to the table across from you, pulls out the chair, sits down, kind of leans back, puts one leg over the other, casually tells you, you probably don't have what it takes to do anything significant in your life. What would you say? It'd be outrageous, right? That's a ridiculous scenario. Well, let's say that the next day you get up, you go to walk, run, work out, and he shows up again. Starts running next to you, casually reminding you that the odds of you changing, doing anything for the better, are slim to none. That this is kind of a waste of time for you. You brush it off, you go to work, and guess who, right? He passes by your desk, leaves a little note saying, that your bosses, your higher-ups, they're cut from a different cloth. They just see things in a way you can't. You'd probably tell that person to take a long walk off a short pier, right? Or at the very least, you'd understand how absolutely insane the situation is. People can't just walk up and talk to you like that. But now imagine that same person is you, living rent-free in your head, and here's the catch. You invited him in. You allowed the negativity and the doubt to live there. See, every time I think about that self-talk, I can't help but wonder, in a world of obstacles to navigate and challenges to tackle, why is it acceptable for your biggest obstacle to be you? Why should you allow or be okay with that? And I'm not saying everything's perfect all the time, every thought's pure bliss, but I am posing this question. If you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect anyone else to? If you're not your biggest ally, if you don't respect the person staring back at you in the mirror, how do you expect the world to? Why is our inclination to tense up and refute the negativity from others, but sit back and accept the same nonsense in our own heads? If those words don't support what you're trying to build,
I don't care who they're from, where they come from, why they're there. They don't deserve your time. And it's a simple awareness that they are not truth, but merely your fears and your insecurities trying to stop you from becoming who you might be. My biggest leaps in life, they didn't come from physical milestones or benchmarks. They came from mental shifts, convincing myself, believing myself, trusting in myself. When the road is untraveled, when the story is untold, the positive and the negative are both make-believe. They are both fairy tales, they're options, they're theories, and guess what? You get to choose which option, which one will be yours. My favorite quote is, "You are always stronger than you think you are." Not so much because it reiterates how high the bar is, but because it reminds me how low we often set it for ourselves when we're not paying attention, how loud that negative voice can be. You know, when I was unemployed, I was writing, I was running out of money, my life changed because I stopped seeing myself as some lost, jobless mess, and I started seeing myself as one of the greats with a hell of a road to travel. See, people always follow through on who they believe themselves to be. I refused to hear that you might fail and the not good enough, and I buckled up for the road ahead. And when you believe you can change and know that the road to your goals will be rocky, it will be uncomfortable, but worth it, you are taking that hostile voice and making him or her a spectator, not a decider of fate. And yeah, you will lose, you can't win all the time, and you will feel stuck, but life's not always smooth sailing, and sure, you'll be mad at yourself, but not every decision is a home run. But these situations are the byproduct of a journey, and here is my point. Self-belief is being able to differentiate your situation and pointless negative talk about the situation. It's about remembering that you are the gatekeeper of your own mind. When you believe in you, it places your faith, your strength, and your determination in the driver's seat. It makes everything else trivial, meaningless. It makes it an option that you are simply not going to choose. So I want to start with a story about cliff jumping with my friends maybe 4 years ago now. We flew into Las Vegas, spent some time in Vegas, and then we hit like national parks in Utah and then Arizona, and went all the way up the coast. When we were in Lake Tahoe, at the very end, there was this spot to cliff jump. This really, really high peak. And, you know, it's notorious, and it was just like a scary thing. And I remember walking up, there were 3 of us, and 2 other people were there. It's like you have to hike up to it. It's kind of in the woods a little bit. One of my buddies walked up, and, you know, we thought he was gonna jump right off. And he stood there and he looked down, for I don't know how long, a while. You know, ultimately jumped. As far as I knew, I wasn't afraid of stuff like that, right? So I walk out and I look over the edge, and I could not bring myself to jump. Physically, I couldn't do it. Rationally, I couldn't speak myself or talk myself into it. There was no more rationality going on. It was just, I was frozen in fear. And I just remember sitting there and looking down. And, you know, people would come up and ask about it, and they'd be like, you know, can I jump? And I'm like, go ahead, right? Like it almost got to the point where it was hurting my pride, and I still couldn't jump. And I just stood there, and I stood there, and I stood there. You know, I forget how long it took. I don't really know, and time was probably felt insane in that moment, but eventually I did, and it was incredible, right? It was a forever long drop and just the adrenaline and the excitement, and you realize for a second that type of thing, that's peak living, and there's more of that out there in the world, and all of a sudden you want to capture it and obtain it, and you realize what you had been missing, and then my friend came up after me. He stood there for for just as long too, right? It's a very weird thing, and it's hard to explain. There are so many situations that are this peak in our life, this cliff that we know we need to jump from. We know the other side is better, or we suspect, but we can't bring ourselves to do it. And this all came from a quote I found from John Green, one of my favorite authors. In his book, Paper Towns, it says, "It is so hard to leave until you leave. And then it is the easiest goddamn thing in the world." And that's right on the money, right? Being on the edge of that cliff, it is terror, sheer terror. It is so hard to make that jump, and then you do, and it's like life opens up. And it's the same thing in this case, right? It's so hard to leave until you do. It's terrifying to uproot, to change, to go somewhere you don't know. But once you do, life opens up. It's incredible. The other side is beautiful, and it's waiting for you. All of this is coming to a single point, a rule that I use to guide my decision making. And the rule is simple. If you are not content where you are, that is your reason to jump. Because on that cliff, rationality dissolves. The future is unknown, and it's scary. And how are you going to logically talk yourself into a scary unknown when you're at that point? You can't. It doesn't make sense. And I think that's why so many of us are scared to make that jump. And we ultimately turn back and we concede and go, okay, I'll just stick with what I have. This isn't great, but it is what it is. I can't bring myself to make that jump. Right? We're all there at some point. I've been there. I've been there with speaking. Big cliff for me when I first started. Ultimately jumped and put me on a trajectory that changed my life, right? Same thing with making videos, same thing with my first client. Like all these things, they're terrifying. And in the moment, you can't logically speak through them, so you just have to go. And it's like, well, how do you logically, you don't, you just go. Because if the present, here's the rule, if the present is not making you content, go, jump, right? Never forget that the path, the future is comprised of 1 trillion paths, and you can bend them and shape them and remake them. And sometimes it won't work. Sometimes it'll, blow up in your face. But again, you're still presented with an opportunity to adjust and remake and bend and reapproach and continue forward, right? The only way to lose is to stay on that cliff for the rest of your life. And so if you needed some type of rationality, if you needed some type of reason, I'm hoping that maybe I can give that to you today. If you are not content where you are, jump. Because somewhere along the way, you'll figure it out. Every time I've jumped, it's changed my life for the better. Maybe not immediately, but ultimately. And as I say, that's what life's all about. So, hey, I hope you got something from this podcast. If you did, please subscribe, rate, review. Helps me get it out to the world. And guys, I appreciate that. And I will catch you tomorrow. For a second, imagine that feeling in your stomach. The nerves, the discomfort, maybe even the doubt, as you walk up to do that one thing that scares you, that stretches you just a little bit further than you're ready for. And as you move towards that sort of dark unknown, the mysterious discomfort, what's on your mind? Are you starting to rationalize? Maybe you're asking yourself, hey, why did I do this to begin with? It seemed like a good idea at one point. It seemed bold and adventurous. But now it seems like the wheels have hit the road and the narrative is shifting in real time. So try and recreate that feeling for a second. Looking fear in the eyes. Capture what it means physically, mentally. Right, for me, it was public speaking. Right, half a decade ago, standing backstage, palms sweating, little voice in my head saying, hey Ed, cubicle doesn't seem so bad right now, does it, genius? Maybe, for you in this scenario, it's that big test that feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Everything's on the line. Maybe it's something like starting a conversation with a complete stranger, interview for a job you want, starting line of a race, having the courage to speak your mind online. Maybe it's doing something your family doesn't quite get or your friends won't understand, cutting ties with what's comfortable, a decision to be what you've always wanted to be. There's a million possibilities. Right? There's a lot of fear that we dance with on a day-to-day basis. But in that moment, as your feet start moving in the very direction that will bring your ideas closer to your reality, and you're hit with that same feeling, that wall that tells us something isn't quite right, that's what I want to discuss. Because it's hard to be met with this feeling and still move confidently in the same direction, right? There's cognitive dissonance there. How can something feel wrong and be right? Should there be disconnect? It's funny, I really enjoy reading quotes, and particularly Lewis Carroll has resonated with me over the years. Things he said in his works, they're witty, they're funny, but they're powerful. And one in particular stood out to me. It's why sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. I just loved the concept, the idea of immersing yourself, in the impossible, in the difficult, the thing that's not right in front of you, but sort of creating it as you go. So I got through The Looking Glass and Adventures of Alice in Wonderland, and it was an interesting read. I'm not sure I'd recommend it for everyone, but there was certainly one thing that popped out at me that I found incredibly valuable. And it was in Alice's journey holistically, right? So she goes into this rabbit hole, and the world is basically upside down. Nothing is as it was before she jumped. Nothing really makes sense. And what you see is her progression as a character, as she starts continually embracing the thing that feels abnormal, upside down and weird. But with each decision to move forward, she completely redefines this insane world that wasn't particularly warm and receptive to Alice to begin with. As she stands up to a queen running around ordering executions, she navigates a world with new rules and guidelines. She transforms the boundaries that used to define reality. And what I think is valuable is that there really wasn't this boom, transformative moment where everything changes. She just keeps subtly saying yes. She keeps moving forward without knowing for sure how things will work out or unfold, as if she's supposed to. And she becomes so accustomed to suppressing that feeling of fear and uneasiness that it almost becomes comical. She goes with it and becomes the author of a new story. She becomes untouchable in this world. And my point here, and for those of you not a fan of Alice in Wonderland, I appreciate you hanging on, but where these dots connect is that it's actually a pretty simple idea. Life unfolds in a way that is unimaginable when we shift our thinking from, oh no, here comes that feeling in my stomach again, my heart's pounding, my palms are sweating, so I've wandered too far. When you change that to, here comes that feeling in my stomach, heart pounding, palms sweating, so here comes the beginning of something incredible, life shifts. See, it's not running from that temporary feeling of fear and discomfort, but harnessing it. It's a weapon, it's a tool, right? It fuels the rocket ship headed to the moon. It's the water that seed of opportunity is dependent upon. And sure, it feels new and unsettling, and yeah, it's uncomfortable, but so is, as we learn, everything good. And sure, you could turn back. You could avoid that manufactured confrontation altogether, but man, you have to be okay never knowing what those peaks could have been. You have to be content imagining a life of adventure and not living it. And to me, that's a much steeper price, right? Because that feeling of fear in your stomach, it's temporary, it goes away, but the feeling of knowing you walked away when life held out its hand and offered you more, that doesn't go away. And see, I look at it like this. Two things change every time you say yes. Every time you acknowledge the organized chaos and move forward anyway, you move both your internal and external worlds one step forward. Internal, because life is your identity. And as has been said before, humans always follow through on who they believe they are. I've heard actors saying the most important decision they make is the shoes they put on, because it lays the groundwork for how you feel. You just feel differently about yourself in clown shoes than you would in basketball shoes than you would in dress shoes. You feel different about yourself in a suit than you would in sweatpants. And this doesn't mean go reassess your wardrobe. It highlights how malleable identity is. Yeah, we follow through on who we believe we are, but the powerful thing is who we believe we are is created every single day. Every time we use fear to propel us forward, right? Your subconscious goes, okay, that's who I am. Someone who does the uncomfortable things, someone who is okay with fear, that's me, right? And that's the internal foundation that means everything. That's how identity is constructed. And if you stack that up with action every single day, you won't even be able to recognize yourself. That's the internal transformation. Then there's the external transformation. Every time you push through fear, you level up, not significantly, right? You aren't immediately transformed. In fact, sometimes you don't even notice. But the truth is, after you say yes, after you take that step, you're fractionally further than a few minutes earlier. Your relative ceiling is now the floor, and it's time to take another step. This is how you create distance over time. So when you hear the word fear, let's rewire that reaction. Let's change how we think about it. Because it's not a monster in the closet. It's not some demon staring you in the face. No, it's a ticket to something more, something to be embraced and coveted. It's the next little step in your journey, and why when most of the world bows down to that feeling of discomfort or instability and stays the same, you will have moved forward. Not in a single leap, but a step that over time will become the reason that at some point, when you look over your shoulder, you'll find a life, a world, a reality that is unrecognizable in the context of where you began. It's why fear is not to be avoided or even tolerated, but sought out as the single variable that puts a pulse in your aspirations, gives hope to your dreams. The ideal life is not predicated on the avoidance of fear, but the ability to harness and capitalize on its power. Comfort and familiarity. In a world where unknown doesn't necessarily mean good or bad, it's an interesting association. Yeah, that possibility of losing what you have is always real. Being mortal, being susceptible to misfortune. We want to protect what's ours. But that's where I diverge. Because what's mine isn't just in my home or garage. It's out there. It's in the universe. It's held captive by what's around every single corner. What's mine is hidden behind tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. See, walking the same path, doing the same things, expecting the same results, yeah, it's fine, but it's just so limiting. If you don't allow yourself to get lost, then you have to be okay knowing that a part of you will never be found. And that's something I can't live with. Life is so much bigger than your front door. It's more than a yearly review, a commute, a test, a routine. It's the places you've never been, the people you've never met, the dreams that you haven't sought out. Then why is getting lost so important? It's important because you temporarily leave everything you know behind. And for a few short minutes, your subconscious understands that life exists beyond the hamster wheel. One of the greatest truths out there is that you are not confined by anything other than your own mind. So why not free it? Why not step outside the glass cube, rewrite your story, your narrative? Allow yourself to take that left that brings you to an unknown destination. And while, for a while you'll be concerned, you'll worry, you'll think about failure, at the end of the day, you will grow, you will learn, and most importantly, you will find your way home. And every time you do, that front door feels just a little bit different. The world around you takes on a slightly new shape. Your front door is no longer an object keeping you in, it's a gateway that opens up for you at your discretion. It connects you to the outside world, it gives you the tools to create the life that you want. Not the life you should have or the one you're supposed to have, but the one you can have, right? So step outside, get lost. You owe it to yourself. When it came knocking, did you hear it? When it was in front of you, did you see it? Or did you look right through it? Completely oblivious to what you had. See, opportunity is a subtle creature, a mystery to the universe. Misinterpreted as this obvious treasure calling out to you, when in actuality it's the map. It's the road, it's the courage to move forward. Opportunity's not the moon, the sun, or the stars, it's the staircase that takes you higher. The pieces that come together to comprise your universe. And when that sun comes up, the light sets, your eyes open, you wake up and breathe your first breath. Understand that you are breathing in opportunity. It's not what you look at, it's what you see, and befitting of the message, it's easy to push this away as insignificant or fluff. But let me ask you this. How does one person turn adversity into the very reason they succeed, and another turn that same adversity into a ball and chain? Why do some run toward chaos and others retreat? How can one person transform a loss now into a win later, and another person view that same defeat as the end? Well, the answer's simple, really. Did you seek out the opportunity or did you not? That is the question. And when you strip life down of its complexities, the patterns become apparent. The people who win never ask if it's possible, if it can happen. No, they begin with the premise that it sure can. The question is how? How can I make this a reality? How can I turn the world around me, the events taking place, whether challenging, strenuous, reassuring, or anything in between? How can I position them to lift me up? That is the opportunity. And without that realization, there never will be your pot of gold. Right? It begins in your head and is projected out. They say fake it till you make it. Well, I'll tell you, there's something to that. Because if you never put a dream or a goal or a plan into existence, no matter how small, it simply fails to exist. You have to see your city on the hill when it's just rocks. It's not a waste. It's not stupid. It's not irrational because you know what it can be. They don't, but you do, and that's opportunity. Their wasteland is your future empire. Their free time is your launch pad. Their hopelessness is your reassurance. They see blank space, and you see infinity waiting to be unpacked and expanded. Look, there will be a day when they'll wonder how you did it, how you made what you have a reality. Well, you saw it. You simply saw what could be, and when you see opportunity, your mind, your body, and your life conform. So throw away the ifs and start asking how. In your world, there are no problems. Simply opportunities. In your world, there is no end. Only new beginnings. Who are you? I suppose you could answer with a short summary of what you've done in your life. You wouldn't be wrong. Perhaps you could point to the present, what you're doing right now. You'd be correct. Maybe you could even respond by referencing your goals and dreams. Your answers would be impossible to disprove. But who you are is more than that. Much more. Can't be quantified or confined to a description. Who you are goes further. You are a journey to a distant shore. You're where the water meets the horizon. You are comprised of the very same elements that make up the earth, the moon, and the sun. You are literally remnants of stars that have come and gone, lighting up our sky for billions and billions of years. How can that be reduced to an elevator speech? And all this matters. It matters because you are more significant than you will ever know. A small but irreplaceable part of something perfect, inconceivable to mankind. You may be the culmination of your past, your present, and your future, but you are also the gaps that exist between them. The blank spaces, the unknowns, the opportunity to see the world as it truly is, an extension of you, the freedom woven into every breath you take. Just like the sun is tasked with rising and setting, you have a responsibility to live life to the fullest, to chase what exists on the other side of the mountains. That's where you find what matters most. And you can attempt to quantify this, but just like that first ray of sunlight reflecting on your face through the window in the morning, it's impossible to fully capture. Words, pictures, stories, they'll never hold a candle to the actual experience, to being there, that moment in time. Those moments are who you are. Hand in hand with everything your two eyes take in, they blend together to create an existence that cannot be explained or taught. It can only be lived. And that is exactly what you're here to do. Live life. Light up the sky like those stars that came before you. Shine through this universe. If that ends up being all you have, it will be more than enough. Because it's you. It may be that our greatest gift in life is that we're always one decision away from transformation. We're always one decision away from a new path, with new experiences, new beliefs, new identity, one decision away from a totally different life. It's almost incomprehensible that all the days leading up to now, everything we knew ourselves to be can be discarded and left with one swing of an axe, gone. What is more miraculous than that? We live at the intersection of two imaginary worlds, right? The past and the future. The past is gone and essentially meaningless. Yet as the provider of our identity, it still rules over us. Our sense of who we are comes from our collection of past memories. That imaginary world of yesterday, like the elephant tied to the chair with a rope. It hasn't realized it's strong enough to break free. It doesn't know that what confines him is not the rope, but acceptance of a lie. And that's what the past, that's what identity is, a lie. We are not yesterday, we are right now. And from the trivial things to the significant things, we get wrapped up in that lie. We overlook the gift of control we have over our future. What does it mean to say, I'm not a morning person? That in your past you hadn't conditioned yourself to wake up early? Okay. What does it mean to say, oh, I let people walk all over me? That in your past you didn't stand up for yourself? What does it mean to say I'm awkward or shy or I struggle with writing or running or public speaking? So maybe you did. But what does that have to do with right now? What does that have to do with realizing the control you have over your life? Because simply realizing you can disconnect from these narratives, that they are not you, is a superpower. Realizing that calling yourself a bad student because you failed a test is like never taking off your raincoat because it rained yesterday. It's like, no, the sun is out, adapt. And once you realize right now is the beginning of the rest of your life, you can start making little changes. Identify not who you were, but who you'd love to be, and move towards it. Read The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits so that you can understand change isn't crazy or big or scary. It's moving little things in your life around so that they work for you, not against you. Start waking up and thinking about not what has happened, but what can happen. Not what can go wrong, but what can go right. You are always one decision away from a totally different life because you're always one decision away from change. From walking away from the narratives that you have accepted. And so remember that. But remember it not just when things are fine. Remember it when you're struggling, when you feel restless or uneasy, unsure, uninspired, sad, angry, not content with the reflection in the mirror. When you feel that negativity, you're not looking at what can be, you're looking at what you have been. And there's no room at the table for that distraction. Not when you can reach out and start building something new. Not when you can put on a new pair of shoes and walk down a different path. You are always one decision away from a totally different life. And that decision should be first and foremost to choose future over past. Your next step over the last one. Choose your ideal world and start building.